Hey Internet, I'm Chaz.
And I'm Dan. Welcome to Wine is Serious Business, episode 207. We're out at Brooks Estate today with Don and Heather. This is a show we've been looking forward to for over 3 years. So excited to be here today. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourselves, Don? Go ahead first. Like, what got you into wine?
Well, I was first, yes. I'm Don Byard, and I was raised in Michigan. And as you know, that there's not much going on in Michigan as far as wine is concerned. There is now, but back in the days when I lived there, which was before 1970, we didn't know anything about wine. And until I went in the service and went to Germany, that's where I really learned about wine. We would go down to the Rhine River and to Riesling festivals. And the people had so much fun, and the wine tasted so good, I just thought, boy, I'm missing something in life. So when I got back into civilian life, I started making wine in the area where I lived in Michigan, Ann Arbor area, making wine with, started with apple, and then progressed to Michigan grapes, which are all American grapes. Mm-hmm. Catawba, Niagara, Delaware, all of those American grapes are grown along Lake Michigan. So I'd meet the tank truck that came to Detroit at the freeway, and I would fill all my containers with the juice, and then I would make the wine. So when wife and I finished my master's thesis, we decided we wanted to live where we're going to retire. So we decided that we would tour the U.S., looking for the best place to retire, because all my relatives moved to Florida, and we knew we didn't want to move there. So we toured the U.S., and when we got to the Northwest, we decided this was utopia. So
I feel that way too.
We moved to the Northwest in 1969. Well, when I got here, I looked around for grapes to make wine with, and there weren't any grapes. There were no grapes. The farmers didn't have them in their fields. There were no, and I finally resorted to buying grapes from a Portland distributor, fruit distributor, Gatto & Son, and they brought in Zinfandel from Cucamonga, California, by rail. So I would pick up my grapes with the other Italians, not that I'm Italian, but that's all there were making wine in Portland at that time, and made Zinfandel for a couple of years, until one day I worked for the Port of Portland, and there was a young fellow worked for us that told me he had to leave early that one day. He was a consultant and had to leave early because he had to go out to his farm. And I asked him, well, Bill, what are you doing with the farm? He says, well, these guys came up from Davis, and they're graduates of Davis, and they think they can ripen wine grapes in Oregon. And my heart started to beat. And
awesome.
That Bill was Bill Blosser, who was working for CH2M at the time. So I was out to his house with my wife Carolyn that weekend, and I talked her into buying 20 acres like Bill did, just so I could grow homemade wine. And so we did that. Searched for a year and a half looking for the right piece, and by that time I knew I was going to be in the Salem area with my career, and so we looked for something in the Eola Hills.
Cool.
Towards
Very
Salem.
Cool.
And so in 1973, we purchased this property we're on today, 20 acres. I felt like it was a very good site.
And we're tasting, tasting outside. Hopefully you enjoy the view. The bees are going to enjoy the wine a little bit, I think. But and we got some of those old wines today. So this is part of the fun of having this show, is that we've got some older wine from the original estate, Hidden Springs label, and we've got some brand new wine from Brooks Estate. The first wine we're tasting today is the 1991 White Riesling Reserve.
Back then we made 3 Rieslings. We started out making dry Riesling, which was my first love. And back then it was very hard to sell dry Riesling, so we eventually started to make 3 Rieslings. One was dry, to go with food. Then we made a Reserve Riesling, which was to go with friends. And then a Dessert Riesling for, obviously, dessert. So we have 2 of those today. One is the Reserve, which is about 3% residual. And when you taste the Brooks Riesling, which are from the same vineyard, same
cool stuff,
same place.
That's amazing.
It's 20 years younger, and it is a little bit drier than this. This is about 3% residual.
And how old were the vines in '91?
Well, I started planting in '73, so they're probably an average of 1975 would be the original planting date.
Man, and so still, right, good mature established vines, right, even in this '91. Some nice aromatics showing already out of the glass. Even as I was pouring it, you could kind of get them coming up, kind of like some light baked apple, a little bit of
little honeyed,
little honey, little white flowers. I think. What do you think, Heather? You grew up around these vines, right?
Yeah. So I think I planted that vine.
Wow, yeah.
I was 3, but I think it tastes great for a 91.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Oregon stuff seems to age really well. I've been lucky enough to have a few of the older wines from Elk Cove as well, and yeah, they hold together so well, like really impressive.
Yeah.
And this is a good example of that.
Yeah, the color's good.
I like the sugar on it. Yeah, the flavors here.
It has a lot more viscosity.
It does.
Than the Brooks does. But that will change a little bit as it ages.
Yeah, I think when the Brooks is this old, it's going to be
yeah.
I love that Brooks Estate Riesling.
It's brand new.
It's brand new, and it's I think one of their better Rieslings.
I'm excited to try it too, because it's it is nice because you do have some historic vineyards, right? Yep. So it's really great to put that together, and they're biodynamic too, right? So it's you get to preserve that when you keep the single vineyard, single vineyard source.
There's an obvious sense of age on this, but there's also really fresh fruit here too, and the acidity is still very much intact.
Totally there.
Drinking very well, right? For a 91.
Yeah.
Yeah, just it kind of reminds me of like delicious applesauce, right? Like a little baked down, a little bit of spice.
Yeah. What's 22 years old, right?
Yeah, it's fantastic. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, we're lucky it's still around.
Do you remember if it was a cool vintage or a warm vintage?
Yeah, do you remember 91? Drinking too much Riesling.
Well, what
I can hardly remember last year.
What were they like when they were young? Like right when you on release, like when you decided to sell the bottles, were they pretty tart and tight, or were they really friendly and approachable right away?
This reserve, with just a touch of sugar to match that acidity, was very fruity, very very nice and rounded, and just jumped out of the glass at you. It was well received. Now the dry Riesling was a little more reserved, and not quite as fruity in the onset, but as it aged a little bit, it became more palatable with food.
Cool. And I was wondering, so right, a lot of the pioneers here, you hear the story about Pinot Noir all the time, but some of these white grapes went in a lot of the early vineyards, and I'd like to hear a little more as I we'll start pouring the rinse of the new Estate Riesling, but hear a little bit more about why you thought it was worth your time to plant Riesling. Like obviously you were fond of the grape, but why Riesling? Why here?
And also, what kept you from, a lot of people grafted over or switched out of Riesling? What made you stick with Riesling?
Well, when we planted grapes, we did not know what variety was going to be our flagship. So we planted 1/3 Riesling, 1/3 Pinot Noir, and 1/3 Chardonnay, which seemed to be the best mix, because the two wines from Burgundy, which we felt we were real close in the climate, and we knew we were better than Germany. Our climate was better in Germany.
Yeah.
So that was what most of us did, and we once we found out that Pinot Noir was our flagship, a lot of folks, a lot of the vineyards grafted their Riesling over to Pinot Noir, which is easy to do. You just keep the same rootstock and you graft on a new variety, and you've got it.
Wow.
But based on my experience in Germany and my love for Riesling, I decided I wasn't going to do that. I was going to keep Riesling, and because I love the wine, and this is something you do for yourself. You know, when you make wine, you want to make the wine that you like. And I found that the Chardonnays that I made, I didn't like that well. Basically because we probably had the wrong clone when we started. It came out of California, was designed for California, and it wasn't an early ripener, and they weren't that good, I didn't think. So when Pinot Gris became an option, that's what I grafted over, was the Chardonnay. So now we have Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, and Riesling. That's our three main grapes that we grow here.
That's the mix today.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Cool.
Nice.
Had we known Pinot Gris was going to be as good as it is, we would have planted that originally.
Yeah, you guys do get some nice fruit from that, and like interesting blends. And does the Estate Pinot Gris get blended this year? Or do you know?
It's probably going to be all on its own.
Cool.
We'll probably be on our third vintage of it.
All right. For those of you who don't know, Heather works in the tasting room, manages like all the hospitality in the club. But like if you call or make connection with Brooks, like there's a really good chance you'll be talking to her.
Yeah.
So you know the whole lineup, and you know the current wines.
Yes.
About as well as anybody, right?
Yeah.
Like they're really in touch. So can you tell us a little bit about any more about the estate? Like this is the first year you've bottled the Estate Riesling by itself, right?
Yes.
Since when? I guess when was the last estate bottling? When was the last vintage?
Well, we do a sweet pea Riesling, which is 100% estate, and then the Tethys
is the sweet
100%
ones, yeah.
estate. But Chris wanted to kind of do, the Riesling scale on the back. We've done the really dry, and we've done the sweeters and the sweet pea. And he kind of wanted to do something a little in between. And
cool.
So Chris was excited about doing it, and Janie, and it's got great reviews. So I think we'll continue to do it.
And flavor-wise, it's my kind of ideal point too. Like I like a little bit of sweetness. I think it brings out a lot of what Riesling has to offer. But you don't need a lot.
Yeah.
You don't need a lot.
Just a touch. Yeah.
Yeah. So now we have 7 Rieslings total.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
That's cool. Yeah, that's awesome.
That's incredible.
And you guys do it well, right? So
Chris does a great job.
Brooks is keeping up the Riesling tradition here in this side of the hill.
Pretty proud of that.
Yes.
Yeah, I would be. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And it's very nice that Heather's involved with the Brooks Winery, because it still maintains my ability to have a foot in the door, so to speak, and be involved in the industry, which I've loved so much.
That's great. It kind of keeps the family feel that a lot of the Oregon wineries have, right? Like those connections are really important, I think.
Yep.
See, also fantastic. This is beautiful.
Also really aromatic, like a little more citrus on the nose, I think. A little bit of honeycomb.
Citrus. Yeah.
Still a lot going on.
Yeah, a little more citrus fruit. Still really nice, like sort of Honeycrisp, little sour apple thing going on.
This is almost like 2%, Heather?
Yes.
Wow.
2% residual sweetness as opposed to the Hidden Springs, which was 3%, a little bit more sweetness.
Definitely tart. I think a lot of Brooks wines deliver kind of that racy acidity, and the texture on it like suits me so well. Like I'm really fond of that. It kind of makes the mouth water.
Yeah.
Edging over to the tart side, but it's good contrast with the fruit, and I really want to compliment the depth of flavor on here. Like the apples are just very complicated and kind of capture the mind as well as the palate, and I really enjoy that.
I think we did 75 cases on.
Tiny.
Yeah, tiny.
Make your move now. Make your move now.
Yeah.
There's only 75 cases of that? Oh, well, I need 2 or 3 myself.
And the sugar and the acidity here are combined really well with the flavors. The integration is wonderful currently, but there's great balance here. This is probably aged fantastic based on trying the Hidden Springs and then this side by side. Awesome.
Yes.
So.
Yeah.
And we do use the better corks in all the Rieslings because they're meant to age. So
yeah.
And I think 22 price point on.
Wow, that's great.
Killing it. Yeah.
That's great.
Great. Yeah, great price.
So we need to put one of these away, taste it 20 years from now.
Right?
That's
totally
a few. Yeah. Not just one. Yeah.
So have both of you like noticed a change in like the flavor profile as the vines have matured over the decades? Like, have you been able to taste that, or is it more like vintage variation that seems to dominate the experience?
Well, I'd say vintage variation
Yeah.
is a dominant feature.
The older vines definitely mature a little later. Bud break always happens on the younger vines before it does on the older vines, and the older vines, they pick those last. But
Interesting.
yeah.
Okay.
This year with the rains, the younger vines tended to get more bunch rot in them.
Sure.
And because of the rains that had end of September. Whereas the older vines, Pomard, for instance, it ripens a little bit later, but yet at time of harvest there was very little bunch rot in the old vines because of the deeper roots. I think it takes longer for that moisture to get down to the deeper roots and then come back up into the grape and infuse the grape with more water.
Right.
And so the bricks, the sugar content was way up, and there was little bunch rot in the older vines.
Cool. So some nice sweet wines out of 2013, hopefully.
Yeah.
Very good, very good. Speaking of Pinot Noir, I think we're going to move to that next. We're going to save the sweet wines for later.
All right.
So we'll go back to another Hidden Springs label wine. This is from 1985. Man, like perfectly cellared, right? Like straight from release into the cellar, coming out today. Thanks again for bringing out these old treasures, right? Like there's not a lot of wine from Oregon's history from these areas still around, and so it's really great to get a chance to try it. If you're watching this show, keep your eye open for it. While rare, this stuff does show up on auction sites every once in a while, like old Oregon wine, and you know, and since who knows how some of them have been cellared when you get auction sites, like depending on where they're from, it's a bit of a gamble, but they're cheap, right? Since they weren't big famous brands,
right? Generally,
you can find old stuff. I've gotten stuff from the 80s, 70s and 80s for like $20. Wow. And you know, at those prices, even if you get a couple duds, when you get the one that's worth it,
makes the whole thing worth it.
It's fantastic educational experience. So.
All right, so which vintage are we on here? Say 85?
85. Yeah.
Nice.
So I guess let's take this opportunity a little bit too to talk about your connection with Brooks, right? When did the transition from Hidden Springs to Brooks happen?
Well, it really started when Jimi Brooks came to me because he had heard that I had old vine Riesling, and this was a few years ago. And his love is for Riesling also. So he came to me and said he wanted to buy my Riesling because he loved to make dry Riesling, and that was music to my ears because I also am fond of dry Riesling. And so we worked a deal, a handshake deal. He would purchase my Riesling. And he was working for another winery at the time, and he made the wine on his own label called Brooks Wines. So we proceeded for 2 or 3 years doing that, and then he wanted the Pinot Noir. So I liked him a lot. He was really a nice kid. We had a lot of time out here, and he loved the vineyard. He wanted to buy the vineyard, and we talked about it, and I said, I want to sell to you someday when we're ready and you're ready. We can do that, make that happen. Well, as you know, Jimmy passed away in 2004 at age 38 with a heart aneurysm, and it was a shock to the whole industry. It was amazing. They held the memorial service here at this vineyard, and 300 people showed up to attend the ceremony, and it was really a teary event. And after the memorial service was over, at least 12, I'm not sure how many there were altogether, but 12 Oregon winemakers, Jimmy's competition and friends, came to Janie, his sister, who came up from California for the service, not knowing much about what Jimmy had done up here in Oregon. She had her own life in California and knew a little bit about it, but not a lot. But at the memorial service, these friends of Jimmy's, winemakers, came to her and offered her the opportunity to save the winery that he had started for his son Pascal. And boy, that was a monumental decision on her part to say, yes, I would like to save it for Pascal, and I'll take it on and manage it. Wow. And she's done that and done a very good job. And first year I had grapes, these grapes that had no winery to go to. But when Janie accepted that offer, I took grapes every place to these different wineries, and they all made the wine and brought it back to Janie. And
they all volunteered their time and space that year to do it.
Yeah. That's amazing.
It was a wonderful Oregon.
That's what I love about Oregon.
Yeah.
Oregon event.
The whole industry just pulls together. And
so we've had a good relationship since, and it's continued, and Janie has followed through with Jimmy's dream of buying my vineyard, and so Janie has purchased the vineyard, and so that this is now their estate vineyard.
It's a great story, man. It's fantastic. And if you get the chance to come out and visit Brooks today, like, the staff is all really familiar with the story, and it's amazing how well they've stuck true to his dreams and ambitions. And he started the biodynamic. Jimmy started the biodynamic farming, and they've really carried that on. So it's this great sense of continuity, this great sense of history that a few of the older Oregon wineries have, and it's a great chance to engage with that.
Yeah, Jimmy's, after the handshake and purchased my Riesling, he says, oh, by the way, I want to farm it biodynamically. And I said, sure. What's that mean to me? He says, well, we can't use any herbicide or any chemicals that you might be using. And I said, oh, that meant no Roundup. And that meant I had to find another way to manage the weeds in between the grapes, and that was my biggest worry, to figure that out.
So since 2002, it's been farmed biodynamically? Or
yeah.
Is that when he started?
Yeah. Well, the Riesling was, and I thought, we might as well do the whole vineyard if we're going to do that to the Riesling also. So we started that practice. Once I figured out the way to get rid of the weeds inexpensively, I figured out what's called a bezariti. It's a thing you mount on a 3-point, and it's $500 to put together to scour the ground under the grapes. And the other alternative was a German machine that cost $8,000.
Whoa!
And I didn't have that readily available at that time.
Yeah.
There were, when we started planting grapes, there were only 9 wineries in Oregon. That was 1973, and half of those were fruit wineries like Oak Knoll and Honeywood. And so there wasn't a lot of infrastructure around for us to get the industry going. That we had to do. We learned how to do malolactic tests in the winery. Well, nowadays you just take a sample down to the local wine supply store, and they do all those tests for you. Everything is there. Wow. We had to bottle our own wines. We made a 3-spout filler that we were able to sterilize, and Heather knows a lot about that because she spent some time on the bottler and brought out a lot of friends from high school to help bottle. Nowadays, the truck pulls up, the bottling truck pulls up, and you hook your tank up to it, and you're done.
Good to go. So these were all hand bottled, right?
All hand bottled, hand corked, and hand foiled.
One by one.
A lot of work, a lot of love. Yeah. So another one where the nose and both the palate show obvious signs of age.
Yep.
The nose definitely seems a little older, but when you taste it, there's still vibrant fruit there. There's still some good acidity. But the sense of age, a little bit of oxidation is definitely showing. But delicious and together, like fun to drink.
Really good stuff. So I definitely agree with what he's saying. Like the age is apparent on the nose, but the fruit's still really there. Got a little bit of tart character. It reminds me of kind of like a good cherry pie. You can taste that the fruit's kind of baked down a little bit of nutmeg, maybe a touch of clove in there. But it's still really clean. It's got this nice, delicate touch to it. It's really enjoyable, and you know, I don't think many people would have guessed that in 1985, right, you'd be drinking this over 20 years down the road, and it'd be really enjoyable, right? Like you could drink glass after glass of this, and really.
Years.
Almost,
almost.
20, it's 28 years.
Yeah, that's incredible. That's incredible. So
I wouldn't advise.
You guys weren't even born, right?
No, we were.
No, you were. Yeah. 6 years old.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wouldn't advise keeping it this long, but I felt like it was something I need to preserve in the library wines.
And especially if you can go straight from the bottling line to the cellar, right? Like
Yes.
that's a good way to do it.
Boy, that's really, really tasty stuff. What's the alcohol levels on this? Were you guys using all neutral oak barrels back then? How were you fermenting the wines back then?
We were fermenting in smaller 4x4 totes.
Okay.
Smaller than what we use now, but yet the heat would build up about 90 degrees in the fermentation.
Okay.
Sure.
And we fermented them a lot faster than they do now. We did not do any cold soaking that's currently done, hold back fermentation and let the juice sit with the skins longer.
Right.
We were much faster in the fermentation.
And definitely a little lighter color, right? Like you can see the age showing. But
Yes.
it's,
A little pruny.
color on the wine. And
Yep.
Age in oak though? Or
Aged
no?
in oak, yeah. French oak. Medium toast.
Okay.
Medium.
And brand new barrels at the time?
Brand new, yeah.
Wow.
Did they still cost
They were
$1,000?
well, no, they were
This does not come off
500.
evident. I mean,
They
there's-
were 500 then. So that was a lot. That was a lot of money for a winery to buy a new barrel.
Because I can taste. I wanted to say I could taste a little bit of toast on the finish, but for all new oak, amazing, right? In the way that it's not there at all.
Right.
So, So should we move on to the next wine?
Yeah, let's move on
All
to the
right,
next
so-
one. Yeah.
It's a rinse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're gonna rinse with the 2006 Rastaban from Brooks. This is estate fruit?
Estate,
Yeah.
100% estate. So this is, and we're currently on the 9 in the tasting room. We thought the 6 would be a good comparison to the
Right.
85. So
Yeah, but this is always a wine that they hold back, right? Like definitely, in addition to estate fruit, usually a bigger style Pinot Noir. One of your top of the line wines.
yes, it's definitely our
The flagship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We only do 300 cases of it,
Okay.
and the Rastaban is half of the Old Vine Primard, which is up in this corner, and then half of the 777, a little younger vines, which is a little way down in front of the house.
And do you remember when you started doing the Rastaban? Has that been going on for a long time,
Yes,
or is that a newer program? Oh, it was one of Jimmy's wines. Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Where did the name Rastaban even come? Where did it come from?
It's the eye in the constellation Draco the dragon.
Wow. Okay.
Jimmy came up with the name. So.
Very cool. Nice black label, right? Red dragon
Yeah.
on it. Definitely kind of a striking bottle.
Very.
And 2006 was a warm vintage in Oregon. So.
It was. Yeah.
Jimmy still lives in the wine. Still.
It's really true. It's really true.
Now keep in mind that these are vines too that are still on their own root. They're not grafted.
Really, I didn't know that, or maybe I had heard it, but it wasn't. That's really cool to hear.
As we sit here, that area out in front of us is all own root Old Vine Palmard, and then
awesome.
Down at the far end is the Riesling, which is also on its own root, not grafted.
Awesome.
Now the new grapes that we put in, the 777, 115, those are all grafted on rootstock.
All right.
Kind of an insurance policy.
Mm. Oh man, talk about silky. Really nice. Yeah.
I'll give you the same question, Heather. Have you noticed a change in the wines of the vines as the vines have matured? Or I guess like your palate has kind of...
Yeah, I think it's all vintage and the weather.
Right.
Yeah. I've come to really, since we had the 7 and 10 and 11 cooler vintages, I'm kind of I'm liking the cooler vintage Pinots.
So am I. It's been a revelation. You know, starting out with like a touch of 05 and then 06 came around. I was like, yeah, fruit. It's delicious. And then and 8 was fantastic as well. And then 9 and you know, I'm used to this. And then 10 and 11 happened and I totally wrote them off. Like, it's going to be light, not very interesting. And the wines have just been beautiful.
And they'll age really nicely.
I don't doubt that. Well, based on this, I mean, this is
right.
12.5 alcohol and light and delicate on the palate, and it's just. How was the 85 on release? Do you remember?
Do you remember if it was a cooler, warm vintage?
Well, 85 was a warmer vintage, definitely.
Wow.
But we had a lot cooler vintages back then. 04 was very cool, and we made a lot of rosés and Pinot Noir Blanc.
Wow. Was that a normal thing back then, to press Pinot Noir to white wine?
Only in the cooler years. We didn't have enough grapes to really make a lot of wine, so those were major decisions to make. Blanc.
Very.
And you didn't do rosé back then, Pinot Noir rosé.
Yeah, we didn't do rosé. They were lighter colored, more of a bronzy color.
Right. Because it's sort of a trend that you see a little bit now, people pressing Pinot Noir to white wine and making like a designated Pinot Noir Blanc. But it's interesting. People did it sort of out of necessity back then.
Yes.
So.
Yeah. Now the Rastaban is the only Pinot that Brooks makes that's 100% of the estate fruit. So we do several different Pinots, but it's 50 retail in the tasting room, and we're on then 2009 right now.
And so a lot of people, or a lot of 2006s I've tasted in the last year or 2 years, are starting to show their age.
Yep.
A lot.
He beat me to a punch on this. Yeah, I totally agree.
This one's still very youthful.
Yep, very much intact. Really perfumey, both on the palate and on the nose. I'm getting like this lighter sense of aromatics. The vintage shows a little bit like there's a touch of dried fruit, I think, on the nose. A little bit of more tannins, I think, that settle into the palate on the back end. But the fruit still has a brightness to it. The silky texture, in a blind tasting, I would never guess it's 2006 based on that alone.
Correct. Correct. Yeah, the texture here is wonderful. The fruit, like Dan was saying, it when the age starts to become evident, right? They get a little more stewed. They get a little pruny, little whatever. This doesn't have any of that whatsoever. So
still fresh.
Still very fresh. So very good 06.
Yeah,
very good 06.
Apples, cherries, strawberries, And definitely these are built to age too, right? Like this is kind of a collection wine.
Yes.
Could you tell us a story about was there any point in your, because you grew up around this winery, right? It's been around pretty much your whole life. Was there a point as you started to taste other wines in the world, they're like, man, I really like the wines that come from here. Like they really, whatever the site tastes like or my connection to it, like when it was really striking to you? You.
Me.
Any stories?
Well, I'm definitely, I started on the sweet wines, of course. And
so did I.
I've graduated up a little, and I think I'm a Pinot snob because really, Pinots, I love how smooth it is, and
when it's good, it's so good.
Yes, and so I'm not used. I don't drink a whole lot of other red varieties, and when I do, I think they're a little bit too big for me. I think my palate's more of the smooth Pinot, but.
Did you have a hard time, like when you went off to college and your friends would be like, "Oh, I brought wine over," and you're like, "Oh, thanks."
Well, at that time, I still
you weren't so picky.
I was still so picky. No, but.
Now, but do you remember when that happened? We were like, "Oh no!" Like I like leave it alone.
Yeah,
right?
when did you become a wine lover?
Yeah.
When did you become a wine lover?
Well, we grew up on the wine, but I really, at that point, I wasn't too picky. But I would say when I got involved with Brooks, so kind of that whole Brooks transition, because then I was introduced to more, I mean, we were still drinking, you know, my dad's old stuff out of the cellar, but I wasn't drinking a whole lot of...
You weren't exploring too much. Yeah.
No. And I still sometimes at the winery and doing winery stuff so often, I don't get out and get a taste the other stuff that much. So when I do have to do winery errands to other wineries, I definitely like to sit and try, and because I don't get out to taste the other ones that much.
And there's so much variety now in the valley, so you get to taste so much stuff. There's so many people experimenting with new things and new styles. It's so fun.
Yes.
Yeah.
We'll talk about, and like your tasting room right now, you just got done with your shift. It's been a really busy Saturday. What bottle of what you've got for sale right now are you most excited to have a glass of?
Janus.
Nice.
The Janus Pinot.
Is the 10 the current one, or is the 11 out now?
We're at the 11.
We're at the 11 now. All right.
And that's, the Janus is our flagship Pinot, price point 35 retail, and it's usually about 80% estate, but then of course we source from, the estate vineyard's only 20 acres, so we have to source from many other vineyards around the area. So, but it's a little earthier. So the Rastaban's the biggest Pinot that we do, and I think the Janus is a little bit lighter, earthy notes, and that's my
a little less concentrated.
Yeah. Definitely my go-to Pinot.
Cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
Or the Rosé, which we're sold out of right now, but Chris is
Your guys' rosé is fantastic. Yeah, that's a really good rosé.
He's had to increase production on that each year because we do sell out of it. So that's
good stuff.
Yeah.
I love the 10. I love the 10, especially the 11 was good too, but the 10 was like a memorable rosé. Or experience. This, I've got to say, this is the best 06 I've had in any time recently.
Easily.
This is in
holding
great
together
shape
really
right now.
well.
So yeah, good pick. Thanks for bringing this out. Well, I think
the the grapes are 40 years old. The vines.
Right. So
the
wine they're going to make
helps,
is,
right?
So does older vines make a better wine? That's a good question.
And they produce just, I mean, the clusters that they, I mean, the fruit is always beautiful. It's still.
I think the potential's there. I've had great wines made from young vines. I got a big discussion about this with some of our friends even.
Yeah.
Did you go to that tasting?
Yeah,
young vine versus old vine?
It was kind of
in blind.
contentious discussion with some people about
Oregon.
it. But I think some people are doing great things with young grapes. Even some of the vineyards you work with, right? You guys work with some young vineyards now.
Yeah.
But I think the older ones have a particular story to tell, right? And especially here where they're more rare, right? Like the old vines here, the 40-year-old vines here, there's a pretty small number. So it's great to see what the wineries that are carrying those vines on are doing with it, and kind of the story of the site that they have to tell. I'm going to pour the rinse of the first sweet Riesling, and why don't you tell us a little bit about the site? Like when you came here years ago, why did you plant here, and a lot of those characteristics stay true today. So like, what's special about Brooks Estate?
Well, my degree is in geography, so I know a lot about places and sites and the climate, and had a lot of classes dealing with climatology. And when I started looking, I knew about Dundee, as my friend Bill Blosser had already bought 20 acres there, and I wanted to buy 20 acres and win.
Golden.
It's hard to talk.
Sorry, I keep
drinking gold. Yeah. Don't drink wine from a gold bottle. Drink a gold wine.
So I knew I was going to be moving to Salem, and I looked at the Eola Hills and Dundee, and for me, there wasn't a lot of difference between the two, climatologically speaking. And so I looked for a year here, and I found this site actually for sale. Actually, it was part of it was for sale, and then included another 10 acres adjacent to it, and I talked the farmer, who was a cherry farmer, into this 20 acres, which has a south-southeast slope to it. And what I like about it is that when the sun crests the Cascades in the morning, the rays of sun are on this vineyard, and they're on it the full day, and at the height of the temperature of the day is around 3 to 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and sometimes it gets above 90 degrees, and we feel there's not a lot of benefit for the grapes above 90 degrees. So at that time of day, we don't have the extreme heat that you would have like on the west side.
Sure.
So I prefer that more even temperature through the day on the vines, and that's why I prefer the east side versus the west side. It has good slope to it, allows for good air drainage. We've never had a frost damage here, never.
And you're pretty high up. Do you know the elevation right now? Like
it's 600 at the bottom and about 750 where we're sitting.
Yeah, and that's over that much history, right? No frost damage.
Yeah.
That's pretty
amazing.
Yeah.
There's a lot of times the whole valley is, I'm sure I posted Facebook pictures of it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I love your
Valley's
Facebook
fogged
post.
in.
Yeah.
And then we're always in the bright sunshine. I'll call my parents who are fogged in Kaiser.
Yeah, we're fogged in down there. But it's frost is a potential the closer you are to the valley, or if you have trees or hillsides that block the flow of air, because the colder air is settling down into the valley, and that's where it wants to be.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's moving, it's okay. It doesn't frost, but and that's what you want. Air drains during the evening, and if you got a good site like this, then you'll never have frost damage.
Very cool. So this is the 1988 dessert style Riesling.
The year I graduated from high school.
Nice.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I'll drink to that.
Yeah.
This is slightly oxidated. It was golden to start with, but it's starting to brown a little bit.
Did you make a dessert wine every year, or just when it was?
We did every
conditions?
year.
Every year, okay.
Yeah, and one thing about the climate here is that we don't get freezing temperatures during the fall, so
Right.
we can't really grow what's called ice vine,
Mm-hmm.
where it freezes. The grapes freeze on the vine, you pick them. So
Magical stuff.
There's different methods for imitating that. However, one is what we did here was to press the juice off, take some of the juice into town to a freezer, and actually freeze the juice, and preserve that till it was time to bottle. And in the early days, we didn't have refrigeration, so we would ferment the rest of the Riesling dry.
Sure.
And then we would, at bottling time, bring the frozen juice back and drain off. You'd have in a barrel, you would have a big ice chunk in the middle of the barrel, and that flowed off was just a wonderful nectar of Riesling. Just the sweetness and the flavor and the acidity didn't freeze, and essentially took the water out of the wine. And we would add that back to the wine, a little bit to the dry, maybe 0.7% to 1%, and then the reserve Riesling we would make it 3%, and in this wine this is about 12%.
Okay, yeah.
So
quite a step up.
Quite a step up, and it is. We called it dessert wine because that's what it is. It's a wine to go with dessert, and you have to have it as sweet as the dessert, or else it falls flat.
Great complexity on the nose again. I'm getting like the cooked peach, maybe even like a peach crisp, right? A little bit of the
I was going to go
roasted
apple
oatmeal
crisp,
on
but
the
yes,
top,
a little bit of the cinnamon from that as well.
A little bit of vanilla
spice.
flavor, yeah.
Peaches too.
Yeah.
Yeah. But man, tastes absolutely wonderful. Yeah, this is delicious. Really good.
And the sweetness, extra sweetness helps preserve it.
Oh yeah.
As our experience is with Sauternes.
I do love aged dessert wine. It just gets so interesting and so fun, and this is a prime example of that.
You're still getting a little bit of acidity in
Plenty,
it, right?
yeah.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
And it lingers long, right? The flavors linger. Never gets too heavy. Like there's definitely plenty of sweetness up front.
Yeah.
But it doesn't get too thick on the palate. A lot of, especially when you start going a little bit back in time. Like I've tasted very few wines of this age, but even like the early 2000s, actually even today, you get some of the sweeter Riesling. Some of them get kind of that like sugar added feel, or like more syrupy. It doesn't taste so much like fruit sweetness. And I guess the method you're talking about really brings kind of that purity of flavor along with the sweetness that is still really evident in this wine. I would never guess it was as old as it is.
Totally.
Yeah.
Maintains the acidity. You have to have the acidity to balance the sweetness.
I think this one does that well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's in fantastic shape, and I think speaks really volumes about the aging potential of the the wines made from the fruit here.
And we finished our glasses fast.
Oh man, I'm running my mouth.
You guys are going so slow, Heather, and I'm sitting here like, come on.
Here, you can get your rinse going then.
All right, that sounds good.
We slowly enjoy the rest of this. Man, I'm just really enjoying how the flavors stick around.
Heather and I will talk about this one.
Go for it.
All right, so this is the 2012 Tethys from Brooks.
Yes.
So this is your guys' dessert Riesling.
Yes.
Currently,
We used to call it the late harvest, but now we've taken that off because we harvest the Riesling all at the same time, so we don't let it hang any longer than. But Chris he brings the grapes to a commercial freezer. So again,
so it's still made in that style.
Yeah. Again, you can't do the you can't put ice wine on the label, but.
Oh yeah, thank you. Try not to do what I did with the New
you already
Yorkers,
do
right?
Yeah, my rinses. I did my rinses. You should pour a little more.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah,
Come on.
let's roll hard here. We're at the end of the show, so
Yeah, it's
enjoy ourselves a little bit. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, we started early today. Boy, it's a 10 a.m. start time, so it's
But what's the date? And look at the sunshine that we have. I mean, this is gorgeous. It's
gorgeous.
November 10th, and it's gorgeous.
Couldn't be a better day for doing this. That's for sure.
So another sort of simulated. So it made the same sort of style that you made the previous wine, the Hidden Springs.
Same, except instead of pressing the juice off and taking the juice in the freezer, they take the grapes in the totes.
Okay.
And take them to the freezer.
And then they press the frozen grapes, right?
And then they press the frozen grapes. It's a simulated ice vine.
Right.
Say just frozen grapes, same process. It's just different. It's not a natural freezing as in ice vine.
Right.
This is the 2000. And is this something Jimmy started too?
Yes.
Or okay.
Yes. And 13.8 on the RS.
All right.
Okay. Yeah, all the way sweet.
Yeah, and Tethys is the frozen moon as Saturn, so that's how he chose that.
Wow. All right.
Very cool.
Cool. Yeah. Cool name.
Frozen moon.
A little bit of an astronomer. Yeah. Yep. And explained by the biodynamics. So yeah.
And we were just talking about how both of us got into wine, starting with sweeter stuff. Like this is consistently one of the best sweet wines coming out of Oregon. And this sells out a lot, right? Like this is one that a lot of times like. Oh, I'll just get some more next time I'm back out at the winery, and like, nope, I missed it. I better hope I can get lucky at a retail shop in the city. Is this the first one to sell out every year usually?
Actually, no, the sweet pea.
Sweet pea go, yeah.
Yeah, sweet pea's good. I'm one of those people, yeah.
Which we're down on the sweet pea, so if you want any.
Okay, I'll bother you about that. Yeah.
I think.
I'm sure we'll stop for the taste room.
Yeah.
Right around the corner. So.
And yeah, this is delicious. Really, really, really incredibly long length in this one.
Incredible.
Yeah. And a lot of evolution in the way the flavors change as you swallow it and sort of sit there with it in your mouth still.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I'm loving that the sense of peach flavor is similar between the two.
Yeah, it is. It's interesting too that we felt really good about getting $10 to $12 for our bottle of Dessert Riesling, which
was
unheard
bottle.
of at that time. And it did sell out too, and especially back then when most of the people that came to the winery were local Oregonians, and the sweeter wines were much more popular then, back in those days.
I think that's true for every startup wine region in the country. Yeah. Maybe not California, I don't know, but everywhere I go now that has like a just starting out wine region, like their sweet wines are far and away the most popular.
Yeah.
Yes. Tasting
and that changes, and it's changed here too. Much more interest in drier wines.
And I think oh God, this just keeps echoing. But
well, it's like it starts off sweet and very easy, and sort of transitions into tart flavors, and then transitions back into like mellow, just peachy. It goes a lot of places. This is a really fantastic dessert wine. Yeah. Dan's at a loss for words. Yeah. So
no, yeah. I'm just really enjoying this, but got to keep talking. I guess that's what we're here to do. Yeah. Not here to just drink quietly on camera.
Well, it shows
it shows the versatility. The versatility of Riesling that shows here.
It does. It does.
When you can make a wine like this, and make a wine with a little bit of sweetness in it, versus a dry wine.
That's one thing I just love about Brooks. They really explore that versatility of Riesling, and if you're splitting it up into all of these different wines, that you got to have a vision in mind. You're putting a lot of care into expressing a certain quality of the grape at a certain point in time, and I think that's where really great stuff comes from, right? It's that combination, of great fruit and skill and really like focused intent on putting something wonderful together, and it's great to see it happening. As we kind of wind things down, again, we've got kind of this great opportunity having, both a father and a daughter with a lot of experience in wine. I wonder if Heather, if you've got a question you'd like to ask Don about his experience with wine over the years, or anything that you'd like to get on camera, or if not, that's fine too. Just like, what do you like to talk about together?
When you sold the winery, why didn't you pressure us girls? I have 2 sisters too. So why didn't you pressure us to maybe continue at that time in our life? We were
my vision was 3 daughters, one a winemaker, one a viticulturalist growing grapes, and the other one marketing wine.
That's a good team. That's a perfect team.
That was perfect, right? Yeah. Well, they didn't progress in that pattern. Maybe I worked them too much in the vineyard early on, but we allowed them to take their own path and not usher them into any kind of future that they didn't want. And so, and it's fortunate for me that Heather has found a home here in wine.
Because of Jimmy and Janie Brooks. Huh? I mean, really, that
was your, really.
I mean, we were going to build a house up here anyway, and so, but just the whole Brooks being here, and Janie and I she's like a sister to me now. So awesome. That's, but Jimmy brought us all together. So I love it.
The work you do here is great, because the excitement that you genuinely have about this place is contagious.
Yes.
So every time I come here and I hang out with you, I love this place even more. So yeah.
She made the connection with us years ago.
You're doing great work.
Thanks.
I don't know if I don't know if any of you still watch, but that were watching us during that first year. But Heather got in touch with us and invited us out to taste.
Rough first year.
But is definitely one of the best hosts in the Willamette Valley. Like always makes tasting room a pleasure to visit. Does great things with the club. So it's been great to be in touch through these years. And I was wondering, Don, if you had a question for Heather about her experience with Brooks over the decades. Yeah.
Why didn't she listen to me earlier than I?
Well, you got the marketer at least, right?
Well, I guess it's better that we both came together on our own terms, and she's taken on this role that I would have never anticipated her to do. Her biggest, she talks to people all the time in crowds and at the tasting room, and I can remember her first public statement was, pizza number 34, ready.
And I was dying. I was really, really shy growing up, so
really?
that was really hard for me.
Wow.
Yeah.
She's come a long way from that time.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
That is fantastic. Yeah.
And if you could jump in a time machine and go back to 1980 and speak to a little room full of Oregon winemakers at the time, what's one piece of advice you would give to those guys?
Rad question.
Yeah.
Wow. 1980.
Yeah.
Wow. Dream your dreams. We had, in the early days, we had a lot of people, not a lot, we had a few people that were able to think outside the box and think about the future, about what the Oregon industry was going to be like in the future and what we needed to do to get there. But not many were able to accept that. It was pretty much steady as we go through the years. And I would encourage at that time people to think further ahead and what we could be. And we're, right now we're like 10 years behind Napa Valley and everything we do as far as progression of events and prices for grapes and land prices and production and so forth. It's we're 10 years behind, but we're maintaining that pace. But there's lots of other vineyard areas in the U.S. Every state now has a winery. We were just up in Nova Scotia, Canada, and they have a thriving industry up there.
Really? That's cool.
Based entirely on hybrid grapes.
Sure.
Okay.
And no European wine grapes, just hybrids, which are able to survive the winters. And yet, when you think about it, we're on the 45th parallel, as is Burgundy and Nova Scotia. Runs right near Halifax. It's interesting.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I didn't either till I got up there.
Cheers.
We're over here, yeah.
It's cool to visit it's cool to visit those young wine regions, and
I'd like to, for your viewers, I'd like for them to encourage them to do as much blind tasting as you can.
It's fun.
You learn a lot.
We started a group before I had the winery, before I had the land, a group in Portland called Bacchus Caucus. And we get together once a month and we would taste wine.
Good name.
And we would do it blind. And we'd have 4 whites and 4 reds, and they had 6 couples. And we'd get together. It's just enough to fit around your dining room table. And we buy 1 bottle of each wine to taste and have some sort of educational experience involved in that. And we learn more about wine during those sessions when you taste without knowing what the wine is. That's when your true taste comes out, and that's how you learn about what you like.
Yes.
And it may not be necessarily what the other person likes.
Or what you even thought you liked.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And our whole objective was to taste and to find the best value.
Yeah.
Because price is not necessarily
really
determination of quality or what you like. So you need to do that, and I encourage the viewers to call 6 friends, couples together, or singles, or 12 people.
Build a group.
Yeah.
Build a group, 12 people, and that's about right for 1 bottle of wine to taste.
Yeah.
And then you don't have to go out and buy a whole bunch of wine in order to taste a lot.
Right.
So you share the cost with everybody. And blind tasting means you just put them in a bag, and only one person knows what they are, and if you do it right, you put numbers on the bag, and you have somebody else put decide or put the numbers on.
Yep.
Bag them up
Keep it
and
a
tell
mystery.
somebody else, and then you don't know.
I've had some great blind tastings.
Because
You've done
once
some
you look at the
Oh, yes.
label,
Yep, we do,
everybody tastes a lot with their eyes.
And with your
Yes.
ears, right? If somebody talks to you about
Yeah.
the wine for 20 minutes before you taste it,
Yeah.
like it makes a difference.
Yep.
No, isn't
It
that
really
your
does.
question?
Yeah.
That's my question. That's my question for the viewers.
Oh,
Go ahead.
You didn't actually ask the question, so you
Oh,
gotta have.
the question is, how many of you have actually done a blind tasting?
excellent.
Yeah.
That should be easy for people to respond to. A lot of the people that watch the show are pretty nerdy wine fans or whatever. So it should be easy for you guys to
what's
answer
the
this.
last blind tasting?
Yeah.
If you have, what's the last blind tasting you've done? Because
Yeah.
we will get some responses to the show.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see those.
Yeah.
I mean, we have a group of winemakers that get together for a different event, but every event we have a blind everybody brings a wine and in a bag, and nobody knows what that is, and then we have to try to figure out what variety it is, and then where it came from, what vineyard it came from, or winery. So it's a lot of fun to do that in that context.
Incredibly humbling sometimes.
Yes.
Sometimes.
It definitely keeps the ego in check. Yeah.
I've heard a lot of winemakers criticize their own wine.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. I would just love to see that.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, thank you both
Yeah.
so much for coming out to join us today. Heather, thanks for being, thinking it was worth your time to connect with us early along and staying a friend for these few years. It's been really great being in touch. Don, thanks for taking the time to come by. The vision to start the winery, the tenacity to stick to Riesling through the years,
Yes.
provided great benefits to so many people, and the willingness to go biodynamic on really one of the leading edge of Oregon wineries. Like, it's really provided some fantastic heritage for this site to work with, and it's so exciting to get to taste it and see what's going on today, and to have these conversations that really make every bottle that much more enjoyable.
It's true.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, so thanks a lot.
Cheers.
Well, guys,
see you guys
to our
next
viewers, we'll see you guys next time.
time. Cheers.
Bye.